Welcome to another episode of the MEGIN Spotlight series. Today we are delighted to welcome Melinda Blalock. We were introduced to Melinda at the Epilepsy Awareness Day in Disneyland event last year. After meeting Melinda, she kindly agreed to share her caregiver's perspective on her son's epilepsy diagnosis and surgery journey with us. Hi, Melinda. It's really good to see you again.
I'd say good morning, but I know you're a little bit ahead of me, but hope you're doing well today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So the first question I have for you is, can you provide an introduction to your son's epilepsy journey? You mentioned in our call, when we spoke to you at the event, it took a long time to receive an epilepsy diagnosis. Mm-hmm. How old was he when he was diagnosed, and what type of epilepsy did he have?
So, as you mentioned, we had kind of a long journey. Beck was diagnosed at age 4, but it was really kind of based on a guess. He is atypical in that his EEGs were always normal, despite having multiple seizures, cluster seizures, having status episodes. So he was diagnosed at age 4, but it wasn't until he was 8 years old and we were able to have better imaging, like the MEG scan, where we were able to finally get the proper diagnosis. So he was originally diagnosed with generalized epilepsy, but over time it changed to be focal epilepsy. So he has focal motor seizures and considered to have refractory epilepsy.
And you went to 4 different pediatric hospitals before ultimately going to Le Bonheur Children's Hospital. What made you choose that hospital for your son's care?
So we live in Southern California where we have a plethora of children's hospitals. And unfortunately, because Beck was atypical, we just kind of reached the end of the road where we weren't able to get the answers. We knew something was wrong. We tried multiple medications, had multiple inpatient EEGs, had MRIs, all sorts of stuff. And it wasn't until we decided to research outside of our local area that we learned the importance and value of a MEG scan. And that led us about 2,000 miles away from home to Le Bonheur. And after my son was treated at Le Bonheur and he had a MEG scan, it totally changed the trajectory of his treatment.
And then can you tell us a bit more about the EMU, the Epilepsy Monitoring Unit experience at Le Bonheur? I mean, what neuroimaging tools were part of this and what clinical recommendations did they offer for your son at the time?
So it is a well-oiled machine. We were really pleased that we were able to even be accepted as a patient at Le Bonheur. We had reached out to a hospital in Northern California and it was a 6-month waiting list to get a MEG scan. Wow. So Le Bonheur had us scheduled, flights booked, everything arranged within a month. So we checked in on a Monday morning and he had basically 5 days of tests. So that included continuous video EEG, his functional MRI, brain mapping, let's see what else, his MEG scan, and a full neuropsych exam as well.
And then how did the data from your son's MEG scan inform the decision-making process, I guess, for the team at Le Bonheur? How did that come about?
Well, the MEG scan just was able to provide real-time measurements of all the abnormal activity in his brain. And I feel like it was really the missing piece to a larger puzzle that we hadn't been able to solve. We now know that our suspicion is that it wasn't that my son wasn't having seizure activity while he was being monitored. It was that the EEG was not sensitive enough to detect it. So my husband and I kind of felt like we were crazy parents, like insisting that something was wrong, but we were seeing cluster seizures and status episodes and having him be unresponsive after seizures. So we knew there was something wrong, but without the MEG scan and this intensive testing where we were able to put all of the data together, that we were finally able to confirm that he did in fact have epilepsy, that he was having focal seizures and quite a bit of activity. Yeah.
And then your son's experience of having a MEG scan compared to other imaging modalities, how was that for him?
It was a pretty smooth process. Because of his age and some of his other disabilities, he was sedated for the MEG scan. Mm-hmm. But we did do a lot of teaching so that he could explain, so that we could explain to him what the MEG scan entailed. And we worked with a child life specialist who was able to discuss it through stories and conversations. And we thought it was important for him to know why we were doing it and what we hoped to accomplish And so he was a part of every conversation. He was a part of the conversations when we received the results. And it went really well. Beck is a child that loves being in the hospital.
Oh,
It is like he loves the room service, he loves the playrooms, he loves everything.
yeah.
So it's not a scary or traumatic experience for the
Oh,
most
that's
part
good.
for him.
That's good. And then as a result of all this, your son had a vagus nerve stimulator, a VNS fitted. And can you tell us how he was after this procedure?
Sure. So our original hope was that he would be a candidate for a resection just because we know about the success rate of those. But unfortunately, we learned from the MIG scan that his seizure activity is in the motor pathway. So the next best thing was a vagus nerve stimulator. So we made the decision kind of quickly, but we fully trusted our team and we looked at it as another layer of protection. We know that he doesn't respond well to medication. So he received the vagus nerve implant on a Friday afternoon. And by Sunday, my husband and I couldn't believe like what a different child we had.
Wow.
He returned to school a few weeks later, and his teacher and I joked that it was now Beck 2.0. So there was kind of life before the before the VNS and after the VNS. So he was
Wow.
able to focus and learn to read and learn to write. He was much more regulated. His mood improved, and we felt really comfortable doing the VNS because he had the MIG scan and because the MIG scan was able to confirm the information that we needed. I think going into it blindly was something we were not comfortable with. And so we are really grateful to
Yeah.
Bonheur and all of the testing that he had available to him to help get him his vagus nerve stimulator.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear that. So we obviously really appreciate you spending time with us today as an advocate for epilepsy awareness and supporting the advancement of treatments as well. And then could you give us a little bit of an indication, or the audience, if there's any advocacy groups that you are involved with that you would recommend to sort of, we're sharing this information obviously
Yeah.
with other parents. So it's always helpful to get a bit of an insight to this kind of information for other parents too.
Well, I think that we learned really early on that we needed to build a village. Beck was the only child we knew with epilepsy. And so we found ourselves searching for Facebook groups, online communities where we could get a lot of our questions answered and meet other people that were going through the same thing. We are also involved with our local epilepsy foundation, and we have just become scholars of epilepsy. So we listen to lots of podcasts and lots of webinars. We met you at the
Yeah.
Epilepsy Awareness Day at Disneyland, which is a fantastic event where it's a 2-day expo where we were able to listen to lectures and meet with different vendors and learn more about kind of what the latest is. I think that's really important. We have a lot of regret that that our path took so long to get Beck properly treated. And had we known about MIG scans and had we known about what was available, I think we could have saved valuable time, but that was not our journey. So it is what it is. But I wish that I would have utilized these resources earlier on in the journey. Um, we are also part of an organization called the Painted Turtle, which is part of the Paul Newman network of camps. And our family is able to go to an epilepsy weekend every year. And for the first time last year, Beck actually went to sleepaway camp all by himself.
Wow.
So he was able to be with his peers that are going through the same thing. And for 5 nights, basically just have the time of his life. So
Oh, that's great. That's amazing. So what's the one piece of advice then that you would give parents who are facing the similar challenge, I guess?
I don't think I could pick just one piece of advice because this has really been life-changing, just being a mother to a special needs child and then walking this epilepsy journey. But I think the most important piece of advice is to trust your gut.
Mm.
Um, we didn't just stop at a second opinion. We got a third opinion and a fourth opinion. And it wasn't until we went to the 5th Children's Hospital that we were able to get Beck the help he needed. So we had to kind of ignore the voices that were saying, there's nothing wrong and he's just fine. And, we even had one neurologist tell us that she thought that his episodes were behavioral because his EEGs were normal. So
Wow.
We
Yeah.
just kept pushing. And then secondly, as I mentioned, just finding your network. Some of my closest friends now are fellow epilepsy mamas, and we're able to pick up the phone any time of the day to talk about the hard. I think that sometimes seizures are the easiest part of epilepsy. It's everything that comes along with it.
Yeah.
So I think that that is really important. And I guess lastly, it's just to live each day. Um, Nothing is guaranteed, and life with epilepsy can be unpredictable. And we are really intentional about living life in spite of epilepsy. Last week, Beck participated in a sailing camp for children with autism. And I kind of had hesitancy from some of my families, like, you're going to let him be in the middle of the ocean with his epilepsy? I said, absolutely. And, you know, send him off in a sailboat with his VNS magnet and his rescue meds. And we can't just kind of sit on the sidelines just because he has epilepsy. So we're constantly looking for opportunities for our entire family to continue to live life and make memories and make the most of it.
I guess that's also important for him, I would think, right? I mean, to have these experiences on his own. So I think you probably, I would think, are doing the right thing doing what you're doing. So,
Yeah, and
yeah,
he has
that.
a brother that's just a year older than
Yeah.
him, and so he gets some of the benefits as well.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I had as a last question, I was going to ask you how Beck is doing now, but it sounds like he's doing very well. But if you want to maybe elaborate a little bit on what he's able to do these days, it's amazing.
Yeah, so he's doing phenomenal. We made the decision to educate him at home a few years ago so that he could get more personalized one-on-one attention. And that has proved to be an amazing decision for him. We're able to teach him in the way that he needs to be taught, and we're able to allow him the freedom and the flexibility. Life with epilepsy, sometimes there's good days and sometimes there's bad days, and we're able to adjust. He is active in a local musical theater group. He just got casted as the turtle in The Little Mermaid, so he's thrilled about that. And he also takes gymnastics class. Our journey is continuing. Next month, he actually will be having another surgery. So
Okay.
he will be having an RNS, which we
Yeah.
think is the next step. The VNS has been really beneficial, but we've kind of reached the therapeutic limits, and we know that the RNS is going to hopefully help us achieve seizure freedom and reduce medication. So
Wow.
it's it's a scary process. There's a lot of unknowns. So he will have his stereo EEG first, which is a pretty invasive surgery, followed by the implant. So we're packing up and going to Memphis for a few weeks. And although we're scared, we are really hopeful of the quality of life that Beck will have after the surgeries.
Well, we certainly are rooting for him and wishing him all the best. So I think that's, it's a great next step. I think that you're moving forward. So I really appreciate your time today, Melinda. Thank you so much. It's been really informative, not just for us, but also for our audience. It's always really nice to be able to share these experiences. It helps other parents too. And it's an honor for us to be able to look into the sort of a different perspective of a parent and a caregiver for a child with epilepsy. So thank you again for sharing your story today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.